for having me, Catherine, and welcome. My name is Barbara Kennedy. I work as a civil engineer at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm also doing quite a bit of future work. So I do have some photos I'm going to share with you. Here we go. All right. So engineering the future, this title. The building that you're looking at here is a concept of propellants north. I'm going to talk a little bit about that before I hop into some of the space stuff. You can see in the background, in the very back right-hand corner, the vehicle assembly building, which is, I'll have some more photos of that as well, where the Apollo Saturn V rockets were constructed. That was the largest building in the world by volume until fairly recently, when Boeing built a manufacturing facility. So the bottom of that is over an acre, which is kind of neat. So this building that you're looking at in front of you, propellants north, is what we call LEED Platinum, and I'll go through that a little bit. It means that it was built sustainably. And one of the very cool things about this building is it was a challenge to some of our NASA engineers. So they, all of our buildings are required to be LEED silver, and again, I'll go into that a little bit in just a second. This building, they did LEED Platinum for the same cost as LEED silver. So the water is reused, all the vegetation you see around the outside uses recycled water. There's a really neat architectural design on the inside, which I'll show you in just a moment. The entire building produces more energy than it uses. So across the top of it now, there are solar panels, and then also there's covered parking with solar panels. Go into the next one. I'm not going to go through this too much. I just wanted to throw it up there. These are all, in 2011, these were all the requirements, the opportunities for points for LEED construction here in the US. And I believe they were awarded 53 out of 61, something like that. I mean, it was very close to as high as you could get. And you can see all the different categories, materials and resources, indoor environmental quality, energy and atmosphere, water efficiency, innovation, and that's the one kind of I picked to show you guys what they did, and then sustainable sites. So this is kind of a neat checklist. So on the left is just some neat data points. 96% of the construction waste was diverted from the landfill, which was kind of cool. You can see the bottom, it's LEED Platinum. And then on the right, these windows, the viewing windows, were originally part of Kennedy Space Center's Launch Control Center. So when we refitted the Launch Control Center and updated it for new launches, they pulled these windows down and put them in exactly the same angle inside this building as they were in the Launch Control Center. So these windows are what the engineers, the flight directors, the windows they looked through to watch as we launched humans to space for the first time in America's history. And as we launch humans to space now on NASA missions, the NASA team and sometimes the SpaceX team actually sits behind the new windows in the building these came out. So they were literally windows to the future, and they got to go into this LEED Platinum building, which is kind of neat. So this was one of my projects, NASA JFK Launch Complex Site 48. So this is a small craft launch pad. This is the first all new from scratch launch pad Kennedy has built since the 60s. It's been a very long time, for 50 years. It was originally intended for new Boeing launches. You can see off to the left of the screen, the road is actually concrete. This whole site was a whole lot of concrete, which was very neat. Getting to watch the trucks come in and pour, and we also built in the very back, I don't have a good photo of it, giant retention ponds, which the wildlife are super into, which is neat. We will be launching off this pad likely this year. We just finished it a few months ago, and we're looking for commercial partners. So neat. This was the concept drawing. As you can see, it was Florida swamp. And we came in and built the concrete pad. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner where the retention pond went. The triangle area in the back is also water retention. So post-launch, the water actually evaporates and then the basin gets cleaned out. All of the rest of the areas are parking. We have distance requirements for fueling trucks and support personnel and all of that. For a small craft, they don't have to be quite as far away as the large craft. And they do have to be protected in case something goes wrong. So it's kind of a neat concept. This is a lot of fun. So this is a neat reuse concept here. Prior to Space Launch Systems, the platforms that you see, so as you're looking up, you're looking through the holes of various platforms. They had to be built brand new for every new rocket. So this is a brand new concept. They're very much like your kitchen drawers. So you know how your drawers pull in and out in your cabinets. These do the same. And then as you look towards the interior, you can see a set that looks like it's laid in there. So there's that circular set right there in the middle. And those are completely customizable. So they pull out, you could build just that set and drop them in to the platform structure. And then you can accommodate any rocket, which is pretty neat. The boosters that you see here, this is a very recent photograph. These are solid rocket fuel built for SLS, Space Launch Systems for Artemis 1 is being launched in, or is being stacked in the vehicle assembly building, which is the building I mentioned earlier, where the Apollo rockets were stacked, and then also where Space Shuttle was stacked and rolled out from. These solid rocket boosters are the most powerful solid rockets to ever exist. Space Shuttle, prior to this, had the most powerful solid rocket boosters of any rocket in the world, and Space Launch Systems uses the same boosters, plus one more full segment. So you can kind of see where the connectors are in this photo. And so that'll be one segment between connectors. Go on to the next one, because I think yep, here it is. So this is the core stage for Space Launch Systems and Artemis. This I got to do a lot of civil design with, which was very neat. You can see it setting inside the vehicle assembly building. Wish there was a person standing here so I could give you some scale. This is huge. This building was built back in the 50s, and prior to bringing in this multi-billion-dollar core stage, we had to make sure the floor loads can handle it, right? That it didn't go crashing through the concrete. And we did. There were a lot of analysis, both from NASA civil servants and then also our contractor partners to make sure this was going to be successful. And it's sitting in there right now. So it was absolutely successful. Very neat piece of hardware. I'll show you a few more photos around this. Let's see. Pegasus barge. So this is the barge the core stage arrived in. The barge came from Huntsville, Alabama, I believe. And one of the neat things is a civil out here at Kennedy, I was part of the project that dredged these canals. It was something I had never thought of before. Of course that has to be done, right? Because as time goes by, the canals gather dirt and they gather sediment, and then the barge can't get in. So we dredged a good 10-mile stretch, I believe. And it was an interesting project. We are on a wildlife refuge, so 140,000 acre wildlife refuge, which makes our requirements a little bit different when we do these type of projects or any projects, to tell you the truth. So, and we also have hurricanes out here. So we had to make sure that it was dredged to adapt that both the barge could get through now, and if we had a hurricane between when we dredged it 3 years ago and today, we would be able to still get the barge in and know whether or not the barge could get in. So lots of testing that goes on there. In the background, you can see a couple of launch pads. Off to the left is launch pad 39A, which I'll show you some fun crew pictures from Crew 2. That's the launch pad SpaceX is using. Off to the right, I believe that is 41. Usually I have a building that I can see in the back. Yep, so that is United Launch Alliance's launch pad, where they will be launching their commercial crew missions as well, with the Boeing Starliner as their partner. So both launch pads in this picture will be launching humans soon. The one on the left has launched humans now twice. So this is another one of my original projects, the vehicle assembly building in the back you see there. What looks like a very small dock and is not a very small dock is what the barge terminal is coming out of. So I was the design manager on this project. Like much of our infrastructure, this was built in the 50s. And so we had to figure out what the supports looked like and go in and decide how we were going to beef up the structure to make sure the core stage didn't fall in the water. I spent a lot of time out on the dock, and being in a wildlife refuge and being out in nature. I know it seems like that's not nature, but the scale of the stuff is so big. You're actually a long ways from the vehicle assembly building when standing on that dock. It's about a 10-minute walk to the front of the vehicle assembly building from there. I sat out on the dock and had lunch many days and watched the dolphins and the manatees and the alligators. We have bald eagles and hawks, all kinds of beautiful birds, pelicans hanging out all around the area. So this is a great project. We had a lot of fun. We also stabilized the shoreline around the edges. You can see the parking lot on the left. All of that shoreline gets pretty beat up during storms. So we reused some of the construction concrete, clean concrete from previous designs to stabilize that shoreline. Oh, and if you're looking at the vehicle assembly building, that very tiny looking building right in front of it, that's the launch control center. So that's where those windows came from in the Propellants North building. They came right out of that building. And when you see at Kennedy, when you see the launch control folks celebrating a launch or something along those lines, typically this is the building that they're in, is that small one just this side of the vehicle assembly building. Another neat fact, the flag on the side of the vehicle assembly building is so large you could drive a bus down each of those stripes, which is kind of neat. I keep saying that. I love this stuff. I came out here having never known anything about the space program. I barely knew there was a shuttle. My mother didn't know we had an international space station. I did know that at least. I came from a horse world, so coming out and experiencing all this firsthand, seeing a launch, feeling a launch for the first time, changed the way I view our world and the possibilities in space and all the worlds that surround us. Next one. This is probably my favorite vehicle. It's not, it is very powerful, incredibly powerful. The top of this vehicle will fit a full-size baseball field, including outfield. The structures on the treads, each one of those weighs 2,000 pounds. If you look, the bottom right-hand corner, that's where one of the drivers sits. You can see a little window right underneath the lip of the platform that is the mobile launcher is on top of this. The crawler is on the bottom. And if you look at that little window, that's where one of the drivers is. And then on the other side, in the corner, there's going to be another driver. The crawler way, which is the path that you can see it on, is one of the projects that I worked on briefly. It's a very special rock that I'll show you in a future slide. You can see people standing off to the right. I mean, the structure is just, this moving structure is massive. We use it to stack, this is the mobile launcher, which was from Space shuttle days. We now have a mobile launcher. This is the mobile launch platform. We have a mobile launcher as well, which I'll show in a future slide. Actually, I'll go on to that. Oh, it looks like I flipped over to the visitor center. I'll have some other stuff. So the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex is open to guests from all over the world. It's an incredible complex. They are constantly updating. This was kind of a neat project. It's made to look like the crawler transporter, which is what you just saw. We dealt with a lot of fire and water and all of those things. It was far more complex project than I expected it to be for a drive-through entrance to basically a science theme park. Very neat project though. It's an incredible place. This is Atlantis. This is a LEED silver building. The space shuttle Atlantis is in this building. If you ever find your way out here, I highly, highly recommend coming to do the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex and checking out Atlantis. The boosters that you see off the left, so the orange is the fuel tank, and then the solid rocket boosters are on each side. That is a full-scale model. I know there's not, well, there's a car in the little bottom right to give you a little bit of scale. Bottom left, sorry. To give you a little bit of scale on how big this building is. It is truly massive. And those boosters, I can see them from miles away driving in the fuel tank. I can see it driving in from miles and miles away coming over the bridge each morning. Very well done. There's a couple of movies and you walk through and you view Atlantis, and just to think about all of the things that she saw, Atlantis, and all of the people who worked on her. It builds history. I'm looking forward to being a part of that as Space Launch Systems heads out here later this year. So this is the rocket garden at the visitor center. This is another one of the projects that I got to work on as the NASA program manager for the KSC Visitor Center. You can see them lifting on the left. So that's the base of the Delta II, and then to the right, it's constructed. You can also see a Saturn I or Saturn II rocket, some of the Gemini rockets, and various other space capsules throughout the space program here at Kennedy. This one's kind of near and dear to my heart. We got to do a lot of the calculations for how does a rocket put up in the backyard of the visitor center sustain hurricane force winds. So that was a lot of fun. And I think we've got it. We'll know next hurricane. So this is the mobile launcher that I was mentioning. The rocket is currently being stacked right on top of the mobile launcher. So it was actually in the other photo that you saw with the solid rocket boosters. It's just a little bit hard to see. The crawler transporter is underneath it. This whole structure rolls from the vehicle assembly building down the crawler transporter path all the way onto the launch pad. And I have a photo next, I believe. So on the left, this is the launch pad. The rocket will launch right off of this whole structure. It'll be parked here. The area that you see in the bottom is the flame trench. So the flame trench flame deflector is just this side of the photograph. This whole area fills with water. It's the sound suppression system. The tank on the right in that first photo, the pipe coming down from that tank is wide enough that you could stand straight up. It's over 6 feet tall, over 6 feet in diameter. I have actually been in that pipe, which was kind of fun. Let's see what else. This is where some of the Apollo launches happened, or launched from. Some of the shuttle launches came from here. Incredibly historic launch pad. One of my favorite places on the center is actually under this launch pad. I call it my space cathedral, because you go underneath and there's just these huge cavernous openings that go all the way under the launch pad on both sides and even under the flame trench. And you can hear the echo as if you're in a cave or in a cathedral. And it feels peaceful. And I can just imagine the original engineers who built these launch complexes standing under there, talking to each other or sitting down eating their lunch and just contemplating the future of space and the future of humanity. On the right, you can see a few things here. So the towers, I'll start with those. That's the lightning protection system. So there's actually a hole in the middle. There's 3 towers, one's behind us. And the rocket actually launches through the hole. That way the rocket can theoretically stay on the pad through a lightning storm. Each of those lightning towers has an elevator that goes almost all the way to the top. I've been trying to get on that elevator for like 5 years now. Still working on it. I know I'll get there. The view from the top of the mobile launcher is spectacular. I imagine it's similar from the top of the lightning protection system. And I want to decide for myself. In the foreground of the picture on the right, you can see the rock. So that's actually a very specific Alabama River rock. It explodes to push against the bottom of the crawler transporter wheels to provide a smoother and safer ride for the crawler transporter. And they've got some really neat physics properties. Yeah, super doable. Do you have more questions on that? So just, we've just got a few more minutes here, so I'll go through these. I threw these in for fun. This was the Crew 2 launch. This photo was taken from just about exactly where I was standing. It may have actually been taken from right next door. You can see where the water comes in. That's the dock for Space Launch Systems. You can see the LCC. It was a truly spectacular launch. These are the Crew 2 astronauts coming out of the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout building. You can see some of the patches along the top there. Every astronaut that's ever launched from Kennedy Space Center has come through this door wearing their spacesuits and into, prior to commercial crew, they got into an Airstream. Now they get into Teslas. At least these guys do. I'm not sure. I think Boeing has a very fancy van that they'll be getting into on their way to the Starliner. Elon Musk there on the right with Steve Jurczyk and the astronauts. These are inside the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout building. This is in the crew quarters. The tours here are incredibly neat. Each of the astronaut crews leaves something behind in one of their conference rooms, and one of them is a guitar that a bunch of folks have signed, and they actually let us pick it up and strum it a little bit last time I was there, which was spectacular. And I believe this is the last photo that I've got. I wanted to leave a couple of seconds for questions if we have them, Catherine. This is the just a photo of a gopher tortoise. These guys are endangered and have derailed more of my projects than I would like to admit. Yeah, over 500 species of animals across the Space Center, the 140,000 acres, and many of them endangered. So.
Wow, I don't know about the rest of the audience, but I am genuinely starstruck, pun intended. I'm lost for words. What an amazing, amazing place. I appreciate that you may not be able to answer some of these questions without, the black helicopters coming and circling up my door kind of thing. But how many people roughly are on a site that big? I mean, it just looks like that it never ends.
Yeah, so it's massive, and I believe the number for Kennedy Space Center is about 8,000. There's also the new Space Force, Cape Canaveral, what used to be Air Force Station, is also on the same property, and the Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge, so that's all on Kennedy Space Center property, and they would have additional folks, so about 8,000 on the Kennedy side.
And how do people move around that space, or do people just go to, because it's almost like a city in its own entirety? Do people move around within it? Do people just go to one or two places?
That's a great question. And it's something that we're looking at with the future of work. So just before COVID, we did have kind of a ride share. So it is a 15-minute drive from our industrial area to our launch complex area, and another about 5 to 10 minutes out further to our launch pads. And further, if we're going Cape Side, to another launch pad. So currently we take vehicles, we have bicycles available. If I'm staying in one section, so if I'm out by the vehicle assembly building or in the industrial area, I typically walk. It's incredibly hot in the summertime, but I enjoy walking. So.
And it looks like there's so many amazing things to see around there as well. You mentioned that the nature and some of the things that on the scale it's hard to imagine, but did you say there were dolphins in the water at that bay?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's a little bit out of the way. We have a large bridge that comes in. It's a drawbridge. It's about to get replaced. It comes in and passes the visitor space center, the visitor center, and it goes over the Indian River Lagoon. And I love driving across it, coming into and from work each day. There are dolphins, alligators, pelicans, tons of birds and wildlife, manatees. Yeah, you see it all out here.
And I know you alluded to it there about some of the wildlife impacting your projects. And I know for some civil engineers who are also on this call, that will be something that they can associate with, but maybe in a slightly smaller way. Is that something that you really have to factor in, taking in nature and sustainability within what you do?
It is. We have so I work in spaceport integration, and we have a huge environmental branch in our group. So we were doing what's called the multi-payload processing facility. That was a project we were working, which is for Artemis. It's a fueling facility and a clean room. And as we were getting ready to bring trucks in, they found out that a gopher tortoise had burrowed under and made a home under the only access road to the building. So we have to turn it over to environmental, and they safely capture them. Whether it takes them 1 day or 6 months, we are shut down until that gopher tortoise is safe.
Oh my goodness. You wouldn't think that a project like, anything to do with space and the kind of money that must involve could get stopped by something like that. But yeah, I guess it happens everywhere. You mentioned some of the future of work things there, and some of the ways that you'll be moving the site around. Is sustainability in all of its senses something that is really at the forefront for NASA? Is that something that gets talked about and thought about?
So it is absolutely always, we are always thinking about sustainability and how do we keep the environment, in mind. One of the benefits of a hybrid work environment across the world, right, is there's less commuting, which cuts off the pollution from the cars. And that's pretty massive scale, I think, for a lot of places, especially big cities. And then also when you talk about us, it's a half hour at least. The closest people live a half hour to some of our offices. So cutting that amount of commuting is a big deal. And it's definitely at the forefront as we develop future work programs.